everybody, and welcome back to the channel, where you can probably tell from the frog in my throat I'm still a little bit sick. But anyway, as promised, I'm starting to look back through all of the old videos that I have on my channel and looking at making them better, making them work, making them sound and all that kind of thing. So I thought I'd start off with my artwork, one of the first artworks that I ever posted on this channel, which is my Druichii drawing, which you can just about see up there behind the door, which was actually a commission, my first ever commission. So I'm going to get straight into it now. I just wanted to explain why you're going to see me doing a bit more talking. This is a very much younger me, and essentially those old videos are going to disappear. Also because they've got quite a lot of copyrighted music on them, because when I made them, YouTube didn't give a shit about that kind of thing. It does now, yeah, so that tells you how long I've been posting on here and how old I am. So, I hope you enjoy it, and let's get into it. Well, now I have a lot to ramble on about for the next 14 minutes. I do hope that you stick around and listen. So, not only was this my first ever digital art that I did, it is also the first ever commission I did. Specifically because it was for a friend, who is now my Patreon, Woody, and he requested that I draw the 5 characters that were involved in my then tabletop roleplay game that I called A Song of Blood and Fire, I believe. This was well before Game of Thrones came out, and to be honest, I'd never ever read the book, any of the books. Game of Thrones, Song of Fire and Ice, all that crap. I do not like it. I know that I am among the minority. I have never watched any of the shows. I read the first book and thought it was shit, put it down and kept going. So here we are. Essentially, this was a tabletop roleplay game that I mostly homebrewed myself. By that I mean that I took the D20 and I kind of system. I don't just mean for D&D. At that point in time I was very, very heavily into World of Warcraft, and I did have the World of Warcraft roleplay book. So I kind of took a mix of D&D and World of Warcraft and mixed it together to create this system. I did use D20s, it also used D10s, D6s and all the other dice. It was a lot of fun. But the idea was we were playing the bad guys. What do I mean by that? Well, if anyone knows the Warhammer universe, the original Warhammer Fantasy universe that I absolutely loved when I started this game, I still kind of love it now, but Age of Sigmar's not as good. I think some of the lores blended together too much and the factions are a bit weird and I don't quite get it, but if I read more... Anyway, that's kind of getting sidetracked. So, in the original world of Warhammer Fantasy, there was the world as it is now. Not our world, the world of Warhammer Fantasy. And originally there was the old ones who turned out to be lizard men, weirdly. Kind of fits with our world, I suppose. Dinosaurs used to rule the world and then they got too big for the boots and got blown up by magic. Not quite the same. It was a giant asteroid supposedly, or the Ice Age. There's so many ways that the dinosaurs died in our planet, but not in Warhammer. But anyway, the dinosaurs ruled the earth. The dinosaurs died, or mostly died out, except for one part of the world called Lustria. But we're not going into that because that's not what this video is about. I was gonna do... No, stop it. Anyway, let's go back to this. So, Lustria, the dinosaurs ruled the world, dinosaurs died, and the elves came into existence from the great old ones / dinosaurs messing around with magic. Now, of course, the elves also decided that it would be a really, really good idea to mess around with magic, except they fucked up big time and created a tear in the world, kind of like our ozone layer, except what comes through their ozone layer is chaos. And chaos is hell on legs, let's put it that way. The elves' own desires, wants and needs created one of the 4 chaos gods, Slaanesh. And when she came into being, he tore a hole in the world, which essentially destined the world to death. Wonderful, no? At this point, the then Phoenix King of the Elves, Azirian, blessed by their god, father, figure, I can't remember his name, went off to war. Ta-da! And he met an elven lady by the name of Marathi. They fell in love and they had a son by the name of Malekith. Malekith was supposed to be the true heir of all elves. We don't find this out till later. However, I'm not going to go into that. Essentially, many millennia later, because let's face it, elves live for a fucking long time. Malekith decides to break off from the world of elves due to the fact that his father decided to bugger off, stop paying child support, and go and fight demons in the land of chaos and just leave everybody to it. Instead of naming Malekith as his heir, he decides to leave it up to the rest of the elves. And the rest of the elves, sick of fighting, decide, you know what, we're not going to choose Malekith, the son of a warrior. We're going to choose the son of a poet. And it all goes horribly wrong from there. Now, I could go into the details of the coronation between the Phoenix Kings and why Malekith ends up being all corrupted by flame, but that is a story for another time. That doesn't associate itself with the elves that I'm currently drawing. So we're going to go into a little bit more backstory about the Dark Elves, and then we'll continue with the story of these 5 elves here. So, eventually, Malekith betrays the Phoenix King and tries to steal the throne of Ulthuan, the home of the elves. He fails, epically. He gets burnt, alive, nearly, by the gods. His mother Marathi steals him away into the dark lands of the north called Nagaroth, into the capital city called Nagarond. And from there, he rules the Dark Elves, that essentially the elves that decided they didn't want to deal with the pansy elf king. Their words, not mine. You want peace? I understand that. I'm quite happy living in a peaceful time myself. And they went to the frigid north, where they have grown in power and viciousness, in the hopes that one day they will be able to take back the throne for their king. And also, bitch slap the other elves because they're pansies and no one likes them. I mean, no one likes the Dark Elves, also known as Druichii, whereas everyone loves the High Elves. I can't remember what their version of their word for high elf is, but that just shows you that I really like the Dark Elves more than the High Elves. Dark Elves are kind of a bit more nuanced to me than the High Elves, but that could be wrong because everyone who's ever spoken to me about High Elves are just pansy. I keep using that word, and I don't mean it in a derogatory way. It's just the best way to describe people that are just pacifists, but they're not pacifists. They're warrior pacifists who just don't want to get involved in the rest of the world and just, go somewhere, experience something, cause a riot, and then leave going, well, I've done my part, and don't take any responsibility for what they do. At least the Dark Elves go, haha, we were agents of chaos, and leave. Anyway, again, not important to the story. The Dark Elves then go on for about 5,000 years, becoming slavers. I'm not happy about saying that, but they do. They essentially go out into the world on their massive corsair boats. They're pirates, and they capture humans, other elves, lizard men, knowledge, lore, magical items, and basically build their power. So this is where these characters come into. The Dark Elves have many cities after they left the homeworld of Ulthuan and moved to Nagrond. And the second kind of consider Nagrond as New York City. Everybody thinks about New York City when they go to America. Nagrond is where everybody thinks about when they go to Nagrath. There are other very major cities, kind of like San Francisco. Sorry, I had to remind myself, it's been a good 5-6 years since I run this game. There is Clarkarand, the Tower of Doom, where the sorcerers live, or sorceresses. There's no sorcerers, technically. That's one of the characters here, comes from there. There is Garond, the North Tower, the edge of the Chaos Wastes that guards against the Chaos Marauders coming in and trying to wipe out the world. So technically, the Dark Elves are also a bulwark against the evils in the north. Make of that what you will. Hag Graef, the Dark Crag, also to the north, where a lot of beasts and dragons and things like that are raised. Nagrund, as I've mentioned, is the capital city. The watchtowers, there are many, many watchtowers, and also the Black Arks, which are just sailing cities that are dragged by leviathans through the sea. And the most important for this story that I'm about to tell you is Harganeth, the city of executioners. Now, both the Dark Elves and the High Elves, funny enough, share the exact same gods. However, they kind of revere them in the reverse. The High Elves revere Isha, the mother goddess, the goddess of healing, and Azurian, the peaceful god king, whereas the Dark Elves kind of worship Cain, god of bloody-handed murder, Halakna, the bloody mother, and all that kind of thing. And Harganeth, the city of executioners, is the city of Cain. And this is where these 5 characters that I've drawn come from. They are Agonistes, the Fleshcrafter. At the start of the game, he is the second in command to an executioner lord. I can't quite remember his name right now. I don't know why. There is the Beastmaster Half-Eye, which is his nickname. He is from the Hag-Graef, the Dark Crag, and he is, as I mentioned, the Beastmaster. He tames the Cold Ones, which are giant lizard mounts that these people ride. There is Lucidique, the Witch Elf, who is in service to Agonistes, the Fleshcrafter. She is a devotee of him and also of Cain, which kind of comes full circle in the future. There is also shown in this picture, there is the youngest character of the group as well, Lady Caris Lotusbloom, I believe is her name, and she is a sorceress of familial renown. So her family is very, very well known, but she herself is not yet. I'm going to state yet in big capitals because she becomes a major fuck up. But her fuck ups end up going well. So if you ever want any side stories from that, there's that. And then the final character of the group is Anaraksha. Now, in the Druichii dialect, Anaraksha means vengeful spirit. It means that this person is a ghost. They do not exist. And this will key you into who and what she is as a character. If you ever want to talk to me about it, or if I ever get around to talking about it, or if I ever draw her again, or if I ever decide to write the story down. So essentially, there were 2 other characters as well. Hukainen, the alchemist healer. There was she didn't have a name, but there was Agonistes' young apprentice who had survived the Cauldron of Blood. Again, this is a cultural thing that if I go into in this video will take so much longer, but if you're interested, let me know down below, and I'm more than happy to draw the character and then but tell you her story, because she ends up being a beautifully poignant character in this story that I created. And there was also a young blacksmith. Now, unfortunately, her player left very, very quickly during the game, and she did die, so I can't remember her name or much of her actual story, but these characters, all 5 of them, well, 6 of them in the beginning, went off into the northern Chaos Wastes, past the watchtowers, to find a race of elves, or a race of creatures that isn't technically within the Warhammer universe, but I twisted the story so that I could create something interesting for my players. So in my version of the Warhammer world, the old ones were actually a race that created 2 other races, which was the Surians, the lizard men, and the Teventa. And the Teventa were essentially the precursor of the elves. Their blood was very, very powerful. Their blood created magic. And if you owned a Teventa, and yes, I say owned, then you could use their blood to create magic and do miracles and all sorts of that kind of thing. But to own a Teventa, you had to also be owned by them. So the ruling was that magic would only cut as deep as you were willing to be cut. So if you weren't willing to be wholly enchanted and entranced by a Teventa, they would not serve you in the same capacity, which was a key part of the story later on. because the Dark Elves deal so much in slavery and darkness and death, it was a very, very difficult campaign to run and to keep it light and fun and interesting and not have everybody just devolve into the bad guys. And eventually it turns out that they were the good guys, because I did follow the story to the end times that came about. So essentially, between Warhammer Fantasy and Warhammer Age of Sigmar, there was something called the end times, where a load of books were written, a load of characters came out, a load of stories were changed, and I tried my absolute best to channel the story along those lines, but to also kind of avoid the end outcome of the Age of Sigmar happening, so that if my players ever wanted to return to this storyline, they could do so without having to worry about the characters no longer being alive or being changed so fundamentally that they wouldn't know each other, or any other of that stuff that goes along with the Age of Sigmar. If you're a Warhammer player, you will understand where I'm coming from, but essentially these characters went off into the Chaos Wastes looking for a nest of Tevinter, because their lord told them to do it, and they found them. And that was this drawing. These characters had so many stories, so much history, so much goodness. I was so proud of running this campaign. So if you're interested, leave a comment down below and I will inevitably tell some of their full stories, and I'll no doubt have some of their characters, their players, come along and tell me that I'm misremembering something, even though I took down masses of notes, because there were so many points in this game where I had to write something down, otherwise it wouldn't have worked. Anyway, overall, I hope you enjoyed watching this really old video, get a little bit of a revamp. So please do excuse the really bad lighting. This is the finished picture. I don't have the PC that this was saved on anymore, and my friend has the USB stick that I put on, so that was dumb. However, I do have this photo. I'm very, very tempted to redraw it. But yeah, that was my first ever drawing video for YouTube. There's Karis, so let's get a closer look on Karis, because yeah, I've got a lot better drawing since then. Leave a comment down below if you think that I should redraw that doodle. And thank you very much as always. I do hope you have liked this. Like, comment, share and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.